Hello, everyone. My name is Paul, and welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone is having a great day. I hope that everyone is safe, that your families are safe, that your friends are safe, of course. And I hope that you've really enjoyed your weekend. It is officially the month of May, so hopefully we'll start to see, if you're living in the northern hemisphere here, we'll start to see some of that nicer, warmer weather. For those that enjoy the snow, I'm sorry, but as someone who's personally not a fan, I am very happy that this season is quickly wrapping up here to an end. And so, with that being said, check out the description of the video below and check out those donation links that we have, because there are a lot of places in the world that are currently having some pretty extreme climate issues. For instance, places like Ethiopia and Somalia, which are in a horrible drought right now. 90% of the country of Somalia is dry, and children under the age of 5 are going to be especially impacted in those areas. And then, of course, we have places such as the Southeast Asia, which was hit by Super Typhoon Rai. And then, of course, with the big topic that everyone is interested in and a lot of people come here for, Ukraine. And Ukraine is, of course, in the middle of this war. They're dealing with a lot of issues as a result of that, and there are donation links there for both the humanitarian effort as well as the war effort itself. So go and check out those donations, those links. We vetted those. Roughly about 80% and up of all donations actually go to the programs and not towards those administration costs. So people's salary, pushing paperwork, all of that, and upwards of 80% all goes to the actual people in need. So go check those out, and we'll go ahead and get right into the news here. Now, to start with, a little bit of politics here. Nancy Pelosi and Zelensky ended up meeting there in Kyiv today. And for those that don't know, or maybe from a foreign country, because I am from the U.S., Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House in the United States. She is a very high-level member of the U.S. government. In the line of succession, if the president and vice president are both killed, the Speaker of the House is the third person in line to become president of the United States. And she came today to Kyiv, met with Zelensky, of course, was talking about the American side of supporting the war effort for Ukraine. And she was also presented with the Order of Princess Olga, which is for her personal contributions in strengthening U.S. and Ukraine relations. And so we have a couple of different things here regarding that. Whoops. If you'll bring it up, here's that photo of her being awarded. And then here we have some of their conversations. Let's take a look.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. Pleasure to meet you.
Jim McGovern from Massachusetts. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. You're here.
President,
Hi
good
again.
to see you again.
Yes.
Yes.
You're welcome. Hi, Mr. President. Jason Crow from Colorado. Nice to meet you.
Adam Schiff from California.
You're very welcome.
Honored to meet you.
But we didn't think.
Я вам вдячний за, по-перше, за цей сигнал потужної підтримки України, потужної підтримки Сполучених Штатів, народу Сполучених Штатів, Конгресу і двопалатної підтримки, і двопартійної. Цей сигнал високо ціную я як президент, наша команда і народ України. Це говорить про те, що Сполучені Штати є сьогодні дійсно лідером потужної підтримки України в часи війни проти агресії Російської Федерації. І я
And so they did, much like the rest of the representatives, just end up sitting there and talking about kind of what's going on there and the increased support for Ukraine from the United States. That Lend-Lease Act just went into effect. They're looking for $33 billion additional dollars on top of what I believe is already $14 billion that's already been sent. The M777 howitzer rounds, we saw some of that today being loaded onto aircraft. They are making their way over there. I'm sure a lot has already made it there. John Kirby will not confirm. He will just tell us some of it will. But as we move up here to the north, Patron continues to be a good boy. Patron is also known as Cartridge. He's a bomb-sniffing dog with Ukraine. I absolutely adore this dog and look for a post about him wherever I physically can. Absolutely little adorable thing, an absolute good boy. But he returned. He was on a press tour. Pretty much they were going to be making a stamp of him. He went to some children's hospitals and whatnot, but he's kind of been on his own little press tour because he's starting to garner some fame. And today he returned to the Chernihiv area and started going back to work looking for unexploded ordnance. So we have a video of that here today. Some copyright footage or music there, but as you can see, he's digging up unexploded shells. And they do just take these things and they stack them together and then they detonate them safely. It's a lot safer to just blow them up than it is to go through and defuse every single one of those, because it doesn't take much for it to end up going off in your hands, essentially. A little bit of a follow-up from yesterday. We reported on the apartment building being destroyed there in Kharkiv. But that's not the only thing. There are apparently multiple different structures that were hit in the city of Kharkiv, including the city's hospital. And we do have a photo of that. This is coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs there in Ukraine, from their official Twitter there. And as you can see, it looks like a rocket did end up impacting the city's hospital. So, very concerning. But something that we've already seen before. As we move further down in near Donetsk, we can see a couple things going on here. First of all, Russian jets were flying over Makivka today, which is just outside of the actual city of Donetsk. A couple of Su-25 flankers, which are their ground support aircraft, basically the Russian version of the A-10. And they were conducting some sorties going over Makivka because they're supporting ground forces there at the front. They're flying very low to avoid that anti-air fire, especially those man-pad launchers. The lower you fly, the less time that someone has to lock onto you with a missile. And so we can see that going on here. So just above those power lines there, making a nice tight turn, and it appears that they're actually supporting troops in the area of Avdiivka, which is right here along the lines. And that's because Russian forces were apparently engaging Ukrainian hardpoints along a defensive line outside of Avdiivka. So we have seen some stuff coming out of Avdiivka before. It's been a little bit quiet lately, but it appears that they are trying to assault in this general vicinity. I'm not quite sure exactly where this is happening, other than the fact that it's near Avdiivka. And that kind of correlates with the jets flying over. So let's take a look at this. Having some issues loading here. There it goes. Let's take a look at this. So there's a couple of bunkers there, and it looks like they hit it with a large caliber shell, kind of collapses it. There seems to be another one right there. Take a hit at that. Looks like they're hitting it with like a tank. And then we see Ukrainian forces are using those trench networks, those connecting trenches behind the lines there. Keep out enemy fire, and they're getting up behind the brush, and they're kind of moving away from these positions because they're not usable anymore. But basically, this entire front line area is a very long string of trench networks. They've been dug in and they've been fighting in this area for years now, since 2014. So this entire region has been nothing but World War I styled trench warfare with modern weapons, which is kind of what you're seeing there. You see even over here, these trench networks just cut into the... And it's miles and miles and miles of this stuff. It looks much more like Flanders than it does when you're talking about something from Ukraine. It's not something you would expect in the 21st century. And they're just going to carry their buddy off because he's a little bit injured after that. But that is what they're facing there in the Donbass. That is the reason why up until this point there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for movement for Russian forces. One, they're focused on that lightning speed attack, trying to blitzkrieg their way essentially down towards Kyiv, over top of the government, instigate a new government, pull out of the region. Supposed to, wipe your hands of it in a couple days, lightning fast war, do it 2003 style. But that's not what ended up happening. And so now they're focused, they're reshifting their efforts, and not only are they reshifting their efforts, but they're reshifting their efforts along a very, very long and very well dug in Ukrainian force along this defensive front. Like I said, these guys have been fighting here in trenches since 2014. So this isn't a you're driving across and you're running into units. This is you're running into a wall here, and they have to break through the wall. And that is one of the reasons why these battle lines just aren't changing very much. And we shouldn't expect them to see huge gains and huge changes. That's why Severodonetsk, despite being in this pocket, this entire area is basically trench lines. And we saw it up here near Popasna too. As we travel further, however, we can see a couple different things going on. First of all, the Foreign Legion is in the Donbass, and a lot of people are kind of curious about the Foreign Legion. Some people even may know people from the Foreign Legion, and are always kind of curious as what they're doing and where they're at. There's not a lot of stuff coming out from them necessarily. We see snippets here and there, nothing different from today, other than we know that they are in the Donbass. For those that are kind of curious where those people from maybe your country may have went to and started to fight for Ukraine. So let's take a look here.
In the front we've got Belarusians. Say hello, Anton. Alright, everybody up!
Not a very long video, but it does show you that they are there. They are along those in the Donbass and actually fighting along with other Ukrainian forces. So they are in the thick of it. And they're not the only ones. They have backup arriving. And that's because the Russians are arriving. The Free Russian Legion is confirmed to be moving or have been moving since yesterday from where they were training at to the Eastern Front today. So the Russians are moving towards the front. They have completed their training. We saw some videos yesterday, but it was very skeptical. Aristovich, however, today did confirm that they were on their way and they had arrived. And so we can actually see a video of that today. So for those that don't know, that is the Free Russian flag. Basically, they took the red out, they wiped the blood away, and that is the Free Russian flag. So if you're seeing that blue and white, and blue and white L is also something we've seen, that is Free Russian. So people who do not back Putin's government, and these are Russian defectors. They were either POWs or they were with or they defected and deserted their forces when they were mostly northwest of Kyiv, and they ended up basically defecting from these regions or being captured. They saw what was going on, went, wow, I really don't like this anymore, and now they decided, you know what, this is bad enough, I actually want to go fight the people I was fighting for. So now they're headed to the front, and they're going to be combating other Russian forces. So something kind of an interesting twist. We knew it was coming, but an interesting twist nonetheless. Really brings back memories of the revolution of 1917 and 1918 during when the White Russians and the Red Russians were fighting against each other. Very interesting indeed. And reportedly in Zaporizhzhia region, an undisclosed portion of it, we can't confirm exactly where, but the Ukrainian artillery reportedly engaged in a Russian position there, and we do have a video of that today. Now, this does have copyright. This does have copyright audio to it, but let's take a look here. You can see it. There's a red circle around at least one of their vehicles, which takes almost a near direct hit by an artillery shell. And so a lot of this front is a lot of artillery. A lot of artillery. And that's going to be the key thing. That's why we're seeing things such as the M777s being brought in, all of those artillery pieces being brought in, the heavy weapons. That artillery is what's going to make or break this line, and it's really going to be what both sides are going to. We've seen Russia trying to increase the amount of artillery they're bringing in, but we're also seeing a lot of the same thing from Ukraine. So I just got a comment from, let's see here, Broken Window Panes, talking about, I don't think they let Russian POWs fight against Russia because of security risks and giving them weapons that could be used to harm more people. So yes and no. So that was part of the issue. There was some skepticism on both the Ukrainian part, by all basically of Ukrainian forces about creating a Russian Foreign Legion. But we do know, in fact, they had a press conference in Kyiv when they were forming this legion where they said, and we did air this here as well, so if you want to go back and check out some of the prior streams, we did air this as well, that they had a press conference where it was the Free Russian, some members of the Free Russian Legion that were, as they were forming, they had that press conference in Kyiv, and they said, yeah, I was captured in this area, and then I got showed these videos about what's been going on, and I said, wow, I really can't support this. I didn't know this was really what was happening in other parts of the war. And he said, okay, from that point on, I was like, yeah, I would like to fight on your guys' side. And so we do know some of them were in fact captured. At least from what information has been released. So I'm not going to be able to sit here and confirm anything because I'm not in Ukraine and I wasn't part of any of these decisions. But from the information release, it is very highly suggested that a lot of these guys were captured and they are now fighting for Ukraine, as well as those that defected and just deserted their forces. So that is kind of the situation. I think there was a lot of hesitation. It wasn't done for a while, and I think because of that, they've been in training for a long time, considering there should already be well-trained troops. I say well-trained. There should already be trained troops. They came from the Russian military. But it's suggesting that they did go through some training. I'm sure there was a lot of screening process for that. That Ukraine probably came up with and were screening these guys who were saying this to make sure they weren't just going to basically double cross you. This isn't the first instance you would have seen either of this. When I was in Syria, the YPG and YPJ and the SDF in general actually had they had groups called the Black Patches. And I met some of them. They were guys that were former Islamic State fighters that defected and are now fighting with the SDF against the Islamic State. Now, they aren't fully trusted, and I don't think these guys will ever be fully trusted until they prove themselves otherwise. But this isn't the first time this kind of a situation has occurred. We saw it in Syria. We're seeing it in Ukraine as well, except Ukraine is going about it in a much more organized fashion, I would say. And to move on from that, we're going to jump up here to Dnipro real quick, and we see that a Russian cruise missile was shot down. So this is something we've seen before, but here up in Dnipro, this is just outside the city, we can see that yet another cruise missile was effectively shot down by Ukrainian air defenses. So we do know that those are still up and running and are being effective. Despite the fact that we did not too long ago see some strikes on Kyiv, we know at least 3 of those were shot down near Odessa. So we still know that that's working. And as we jump down to Mariupol, 100 people have been evacuated from the AZOVSTAL. This brings the total up to about 120. 20 were evacuated yesterday. 100 were evacuated today, and we actually get to see this one from multiple points of view. So there's been a ceasefire agreement between the Ukrainian forces and the Russian forces, and both the Red Cross and the United Nations are there on the ground, and they're overseeing the evacuation efforts. Of at least the civilians, the Ukrainians are asking that their wounded are also taken away, since they are no longer considered combatants. They are now, since they are too heavily wounded to be considered walking wounded or condition 1 casualties, they are now effectively non-combatants and should be getting evacuated as well, which is something that Ukraine is pushing for. But we can see this from a couple different angles. First, we're going to take a look from the Azov battalion themselves as they're being evacuated out of the AZOVSTAL. Let's take a look here.
Все хорошо. Автобус уже вообще рядом.
Были здесь 2 месяца.
2 месяца, да?
Да.
Ну вот сейчас приехали с ООН, с Красного Креста. Как малыша зовут?
Святослав.
Святослав, святоответственное имя. Все, Святику я кулачок.
Давай, кулачок.
Все будет хорошо.
6 месяцев исполнилось.
Вчера, да?
Да, вчера 28.
Уже еды у вас практически не было.
And so we can also see this as they're getting loaded on here. And you can clearly see International Committee of the Red Cross, and then that is, of course, and you can tell by the hats as well, these are, of course, members of the UN, also known as the Blue Hats and Blue Helmets. And we can actually see that second part of that first video was going onto the bus, but we can see that once again here.
Дети постоянно хотели слушать. Знаете, взрослая потерка.
Собственно, пытаемся сейчас эвакуировать людей. Пока еще не стреляют. Мы здесь будем завтра.
удачи. Мы будем здесь обязательно. Постараемся все, что вы хотите.
Спасибо. И вам всем удачи.
Удачи.
И здоровечка вам.
And so, from our understanding, they are getting evacuated once again to Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia has really been where the majority of people that have been able to escape Mariupol have been able to make it to. And so that they're going and getting tended to at the hospitals there. I'm sure those very same people escaping today will also be arriving and probably getting checked out there, the hospitals there as well. So, happy news out of Mariupol today. It's been a lot of sad news for the last couple of months, so I'm actually kind of happy to see people are getting evacuated. There are some international groups doing it there. It's not just some kind of agreements. There's a third party involved there to kind of keep things organized and committed there on both sides. So, very nice to see that. As we move over into Melitopol, it's time to go back to the USSR. So for those that get that, it's a Beatles reference. They made a song back in the USSR. But that's because the Russian forces hoisted the old hammer and sickle flag of the Soviet Union above the city of Melitopol today. And they blasted Soviet music from the Second World War on the speakers hooked up to their Gaz Tigers. So very interesting footage coming out today. And kind of one of the first videos we have in a striking set of How to Not Look Like the Bad Guys 101 series. So let's take a look. So, the reason I say How to Not Look Like Bad Guys 101 when it comes to that is because for decades, at least here in the West, for decades following World War II, the fear was of the Soviet Union taking over everything, and of the Cold War going hot. And this is the view from literally every country that wasn't in the Soviet bloc, and aside from essentially Belarus, who is also an independent country, mind you. Granted, they are kind of it's under quasi Russian occupation right now because they have so many forces in it, but every other country broke apart and essentially they went and joined NATO. They went from, I think, like 16 countries to now there's 30. They're looking at possibly 32 if Sweden and Finland decide to join. But a lot of these countries are former Soviet blocs, and including Ukraine and Poland, half of Germany. I mean, all this entire region used to be Soviet, and they all decided they wanted to jump ship and join the West at the fall of when the Soviet Union collapsed in '91. Now, if you're trying not to look like a bad guy, and considering the history for the Western countries, and you're trying to portray yourself as doing a just cause, which is, destroying the Nazis in Ukraine, which is one of the reasons they have to take Mariupol. They're still trying to take Mariupol, the AZOVSTAL steelworks, just because the Azov battalions were very extreme right wing when they formed. And specifically when they formed, and that's because roughly about only 10% of them are still that right-wing extremists. So this whole denazification process, but when you're hoisting the Soviet Union flag, it really doesn't help your outlook at all, at least perception-wise, because for all intents and purposes, perception can be reality. And it also doesn't help that you're stealing people's farm equipment. As we can see here, this is something that's starting to gain some more recognition by mainstream media sources. We reported on this from, actually we have things from Russian governments saying they're going to take grain out of Ukraine. That's not the only thing. We've shown this before as well. In fact, there is some interesting news came out in mainstream media where turns out it was a John Deere dealership in Melitopol, was all of its about $5 million worth, which is essentially their entire stock there, was taken, and they had GPS locators. They have GPS systems in it, and they tracked it being shipped all the way to Chechnya. But you could remotely lock the vehicle, so now it's worthless to the Russians. But that doesn't stop them anyway. As we see here, the Chechens, or also known as the Kadyrovites, are also looting even more of it. So let's take a look here. So there it is. You can see them. They're loading up everything. A lot of these vehicles marked with Z, as that one that just passed. More Z's. So you can tell these guys are they're transporting this, and they're being escorted. So this is a organized effort, and that's part of the issue. In fact, we and a lot of other people have also made comparisons between this and the Holodomor of 1932 and 1933, saying if done to the extent that it sounds like they're planning on doing it, it could create a second Holodomor, at least within Russian-occupied territories. In the Holodomor, millions of people died of starvation. And that was back in 1932 and 1933, where there was forced basically taking of the grain stocks by the Soviet Union out of Ukraine, compounded with other issues such as just the weather that year and poor crop rotation. But that is actually all of the news inside of Ukraine. But there is still a couple things outside of Ukraine that is to be mentioned, and that is the first thing here over by Belgorod. We know that actually an ammo depot in the Belgorod Oblast near Kozychevo was destroyed. We actually, thanks to Google no longer hiding anything, that would be right here, from our understanding. But the ammo depot there was reportedly hit by Ukrainian artillery, and it is now currently going off. That also it conjoins with the fact that the air defense systems are going off over Belgorod tonight, and the fact that Ukrainian forces are reportedly warning Ukrainian citizens that live in these border regions, such as the Kursk Oblast, Bryansk, Belgorod, to leave the border region. If you live in the Russian Federation, leave the border region. We can't confirm that this is what this is being saying, but this is what we're hearing currently. So we're going to go ahead and take a look here. There's some very interesting footage coming out.
О, Господи. Они предупреждают.
Кто тебя предупредит?
Ну, пограничники должны предупреждать.
Руки трусятся. Близко совсем.
Что, война? Подожди, вот ты перед...
So very interesting. This wouldn't be the first time that the Belgorod Oblast had been hit by Ukraine. In fact, there's been several strikes here, as well as also up in Bryansk. There is currently information suggesting that a rail bridge in the Kursk region was sabotaged as well. However, while that has been highly reported, we don't know if it was sabotaged or if it simply was broken down. Either way, it could impact logistics, but we don't have enough to really confirm too much there, so we didn't put it here. Once again, how to not look like a bad guy 101. Once again, the Russians are vehemently saying that they're denazifying Ukraine. And I'm just going to let these photos speak for themselves. This is from their preparation and rehearsals for the May 9th Victory Parade. Once again, you don't just say things, you follow them with actions. But that's not the only instance. Nope, there's multiple. Oh, there's one. There's some more. So, yeah, once again, how to not look like a bad guy. I don't think I need to really address why I'm saying that with those pictures. But, yeah. I really am at a loss for words with that. I saw that today and I almost couldn't believe it. I had to make sure that this was an actual thing because I saw the very first photo, the one with the ladies, and I thought there's no way this has to be some kind of a propaganda thing being spread on the western side, right? Like there's no way that this is a thing. And then I found more photos and more photos and more photos, and then, yeah, it's a thing, I guess. I don't know if it's just for their practice, because it looks like it's marking each rank and file. But I don't know if it's just for their preparations, but man, it doesn't paint a good light for you. If you're trying to say that you're doing something that's just dressing like that and flying the flags that you're flying and playing the music that you're playing and this, you can't say things and not follow them with actions. You have to, you have to mean what you say, and you have to show and be transparent about what your objectives are, and it just hasn't happened at all. And now you're just flagrantly looking like the bad. It's like the Germans during World War I having skulls on everything, on all their helmets and everything, and those nice pointed tips. Not that their helmets were very good. They were parade helmets, but just doesn't look good. So, going further to the east here, we can take a look here. A Russian Mi-8 ended up crashing in Trans-Baikal region. So, there were about, according to the reports we saw, there were about 15 souls aboard. At least 5 of them were reported injured, and another one person was reportedly killed during the incident. So we do have something on that here. So it's reported that they were attempting a hard landing, but it did not go very well. And as we start to roll into the Middle East, we're actually going to move north to south on this, and that's because up here, there's been some developments in Armenia and in Azerbaijan. So Armenia and Azerbaijan have been at war with each other for a while, and they are just now getting to negotiations. We can see that there are large opposition rallies in Yerevan, which is in Armenia, and that's because currently it is believed that the ruling party right now is going to basically take all the concessions, just so they can be at peace. They're going to do whatever Azerbaijan wants. And that has not struck a very good chord with the local population, as we can see here. And so this is part of there have been nationwide protests at this point regarding this issue. But this also happens as Azerbaijan is reporting that their forces received incoming fire from Armenian forces late last night. So they're reporting taking large caliber weapons fire from the Armenians. This is likely meaning that they were taking artillery. They say that they did not sustain any casualties or losses. And that the situation is currently under control. And in Baku, 7 out of 10 rally attendees were arrested at a very small rally. It's a youth movement called Democracy 1918. And they were arrested there in Baku, but they were then immediately released somewhat about like an hour later, is what they were saying. So they were just temporarily detained and released. Very small rally there in the square. But you can see them getting arrested there. And as we move into Iraq, there are several developments today. We're going to once again continue on that southerly course, and that's because 2 launchers were found in northern Iraq after a couple of rocket attacks, or I should say attempted rocket attacks. In fact, there were 2 different attacks. One was against a oil facility near the city of Erbil. The second one was actually against Turkish forces somewhere there in the north, where they've been conducting a military operation against the PKK. It's not currently known who conducted these operations, but 2 launchers were found that are reported to have been used in these attacks, despite the fact that we don't know who conducted these. There were no actual casualties or losses during either of these attacks. They seem to have completely missed their targets. So that is why they are attempted.
Sorry. والولئيه مفروه والمع حسن. اوه يا علي.
And there are those launchers. A lot of these can, believe it or not, be done remotely. What's important regarding these is a lot of people don't realize this, and it's the fact that when it comes to these groups, a lot of times, I mean, they know that they're vastly outgunned, they know that they're outnumbered, and they know that they have a they're technologically inferior to whatever forces they're engaging. That's generally what militants find themselves at. And so that's why you see a lot of things like IEDs used. But what you don't know is a lot of the rocket systems that they use and a lot of the mortars they use are also remotely done. Maybe not with sophisticated switches or whatever, like maybe some of these rockets were. But there's other things they can do too, such as if you take a mortar round and you freeze it in ice because you live in the desert, then you put it in a mortar tube. When that ice ends up, you go ahead and set up that mortar tube, however you plan on it, shooting. You then freeze that mortar in a block of ice and put it in the tube. When the ice melts, it will drop the mortar round for you and it will fire it. You don't even have to be anywhere near it. That's something that was done against U.S. forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, just to keep them on their toes. So that's why they found the launchers, but maybe not necessarily the people that used them. 11 Peshmerga were killed near Chamchamal, which is in northern Iraq today. They weren't killed by enemy fire. There was apparently a vehicle accident. The Peshmerga are Kurdish militia forces there in northern Iraq, which is also known as Iraqi Kurdistan. So they just ended up being killed in a vehicle accident, and it looks like it was a pretty serious one. It did. Looks like it completely rolled the vehicle there at some point, just because its front end is completely smashed in. And down in Baghdad, interesting resident there. I've spent some time in Baghdad. It is a very interesting city. It's a very cool city. I wish I could visit it someday when it's a little bit safer too. But a resident in Baghdad is very much of a crazy cat person. Does not seem to enjoy dogs at all. Really likes cats though, as we can clearly see here. He has a lion. This guy is rolling around with a lion as his pet. Now, this isn't the first time we saw this. We've seen this before in places like Nasiriyah during the protests, but I just thought this was absolutely cool. We all thought it was cool, and it was pretty crazy. This guy's just driving around the streets of Baghdad with a lion in his back of his car. It's just his average house pet, I guess. And I do not envy these people whatsoever, however, when it comes to their climate. And that's because there are massive sandstorms currently enveloping Iraq right now. The sandstorms are horrendous. They are very thick. You can't see anything in front of you, and you feel like you're suffocating. They are terrible. If any of you have been through one, you will also understand this. But so far, it's bad enough that at least 4 people in Karbala have been killed just due to vehicle accidents attributed to the storm. And more are reported into Crit going to the hospital for asphyxiation. So it is actually a very serious thing when I'm saying you just can't feel like you can breathe. It's because sometimes you actually can't. And I've also seen it where it sandstorms and rains at the same time, and it rains mud, which is absolutely the worst thing I've ever had to go through weather-wise. And once again, I don't envy these people at all. This is a terrible, terrible thing, and I really, really would not want to be there either. But that's going to be rolling through the country. I don't know how long it is currently expected to last, but it is going to have some severe impacts. And we can see here, everything turns orange, and you cannot see very far at all. We can see one of those vehicle accidents there. That is the hospital there in Tikrit. You can even see here just this stuff is very fine powder. It's not even like your normal sand. So it gets in everything. If there's a little crack, it's going to get in it. It's going to make everything absolutely dusty. Let alone that door opening and closing, letting people in. I mean, just look at this. You can't see 5 feet in front of your face kind of sandstorm. So do not envy them whatsoever. I really hope that people are able to stay inside and stay safe regarding that, because I know that can cause a lot of issues, especially if you already have respiratory issues like asthma and stuff. That's just not good. And as we move over here into Sri Lanka, rallies are currently calling for the president's removal. So we're getting this from France 24, but the opposition party is calling for the removal of the president of Colombo, or president of Sri Lanka, sorry. He's held up in his presidential compound in Colombo. It's been barricaded for really almost a month. And this is because inflation is skyrocketing. They have constant power outages. Food, fuel, and medicine are in short supply. And he's trying to institute a government crackdown, and he's cut off all of social media, which we've previously reported here. So, not looking very good for him. This is part of the worst economic depression that Sri Lanka has seen in its history as an independent country. And we do have a photo here of some of those protests. So, very, very unhappy currently. Very unhappy. And as we go over here into Nigeria, the Nigerian forces ended up killing 22 Islamic State militants today in the state of Borno. So Borno has seen a lot of violence lately. It's been one of the heavily contested areas between Nigerian forces and the Islamic State. They are very active here, conducting suicide bombings, vehicle bombings, skirmishes, raiding. You name it, they've been doing it, and now it seems that the Nigerian forces are kind of starting to fight back a little bit more, and they're going on the offensive here. We haven't seen a lot of them going on the offensive, just staying kind of defensive there, doing some minor counterinsurgency. But They did end up killing 22 militants. They set some vehicles on fire at the locations. That way they couldn't be used again. They captured some weapons and equipment that had previously been used or had been captured from government forces and police stations throughout the country as they were getting used on their own forces. And as we can see here, the Islamic State flag, of course, and lots of AK variants in there as well. So very interesting indeed. I'm happy to see the Islamic State is getting a taste of its own medicine there. And to wrap up our day here, we actually go to Paris, France. And that's because that is the headquarters of the European Space Agency, which discovers some very interesting trenches on Mars. They're actually called Tantalus Fosse, and which literally means a hollow or depression. And this is basically created because of a low relief volcano, meaning it rose slightly in elevation, causing some of the surroundings to become warped, and then they kind of get extended and they get broken up. And so it kind of looks like someone has taken their fingernails and kind of just scraped across the planet. So it's kind of cool looking. We'll take a look here at a couple of these. So this is a scan of it. So these are the scans here. You can kind of see these getting kind of scraped around. This right here, Alba Patera, is actually that low relief volcano. Think of it kind of like if you got a pimple, and everything kind of raises up, and then it kind of, you have those kind of weird little creases and stuff in your skin, that kind of thing. So we can see it much better here on the satellite photography. Like I said, it literally just looks like someone just took their nails and just dug it right through the earth there. Another one here coming from their Twitter. And that crater is about 18 kilometers across. That's pretty cool. So, very, very cool to check out. Very happy to see that. And, of course, we're getting that from the European Space Agency. So, very cool organization. Very cool to see some more developments coming from space, of course. I'm always fascinated by seeing what's going on outside of our planet. But there is also a lot going on inside of our planet. And so as we wrap today up, please don't forget the donation links below in the video description. We want to be able to help the millions of people that need help right now. And we can only do that with your support. And the community is what makes or break this thing. And without it, we couldn't do this. We really want to know what's going on in Ukraine and other parts of the world. We want to be able to report in an unbiased way, or if we have a bias, much like we do in Ukraine, at least voice that bias openly. Then, along with that, we want to be able to continue to be the news that gives back, which means we want to be able to give back to the causes that are creating the news. And that means that places like Ethiopia in the Tigray region, places like Somalia, which is 90% dry right now, places like Ukraine, which is going through this horrible conflict, and the war being on the Eastern Front has just created a new wave of refugees and people that are now homeless, have lost everything, and people that are in need. The people coming out of Mariupol. And same thing with Southeast Asia. I mean, though they went through a huge catastrophic typhoon that destroyed a lot of their homes and a lot of their infrastructure and put a lot of food insecurities there for them. And if we can, we're still looking for something credible for places like Durban, South Africa, which has got hit by this massive amount of floods, killed 431 people, and caused millions of dollars in damage. So we want to be able to help these people, and we can't do it without your support. So if you can't give a lot, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, I completely understand. Give this video a like and subscribe, not because I want to be super popular, but because I want to be popular enough that people come here and watch this. I can put fundraisers directly onto the stream without having to just do it in the donation links below. I want to be able to put it onto the stream itself. I never want to put super chats on this thing. I have a full-time job, so I'm not too worried about the money. I just care about wanting to do this and do it for the right reasons. And that's what the whole team here is behind. So please give us your support. Join us on the Discord. There's plenty of people on there. They post stuff all day long. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on in Ukraine or the best memes regarding Ukraine and the incompetence of the Russian forces there, check out our Discord below. We'll be happy to have you. Rack my brain a little bit on whatever issues we have. Different sections for different regions of the world. So not all of it just goes under Ukraine. It's not just a jumbled mess. So with that, I appreciate you joining us. I hope that your family is safe, that you remain safe as well. And I hope that your friends remain safe. And I hope you have a wonderful Monday. Please keep in mind, we will not be streaming tomorrow. Tomorrow is the one day off we do every week now. It's going to be a consistent theme. We'll also let you know if there are other scheduled times off, as there are currently some coming up this month. And we'll get that information out to you as well. But we will let you know when we're going to be off, but Mondays are going to be a regular time. And with that, I hope you have a great day, and we will see you Tuesday for the 48-hour review of what happened over the past 2 days, both in Ukraine and around the world. So thank you for joining us here at the New News. My name is Paul. Have a great night.